All right. Welcome to the Red and Black. I'm here with Ryan Siller for our second interview. Ryan was the Catholic State Champ last year at 160 pounds. Thank you for taking the time out of your very busy day to join
Uh-huh.
me. This really means a lot. We're going to get right into it. Um, Before you took first in 2020, you had a tougher run at the sectional tournament. Um, what were you having to do to transition each year as improvements, every year recognizing different mistakes you were making to improve for the following season?
A lot of what changed for me was like maturity and just getting myself in a better physical and like mental place for tournaments. When I was younger, it was all about, like, got to beat this guy, got to beat that guy, got to win this match. And as I kind of got older, it was more like, we're just going to win this and it doesn't really matter. Like, that takes just time to develop and get used to, what I take. I took fourth, then fifth, then third, and then I won it.
Yeah,
It's like I was always in the running, but you get some tough guys, tough matches. Junior year, I had a tough kid in the semis. Yeah, I always had a tough weight class.
yeah,
Um, you just kind of got to be persistent and take responsibility for yourself because no one else is going to win the match for you. No one's going to train for you. So, you know.
that is very true. Um, Going on about your run in 2018, you had a very poor call on the ref's end. Your opponent ran you out of bounds, and you were actually called for fleeing the mat, and the ref awarded the other kid a point, costing you to lose the match because I believe this was overtime, um, double overtime, and he ran you out of bounds and he got the point. Describe what was happening in that moment, maybe the aftermath afterwards, like that whole thought process of what had occurred.
So I'd lost to Podolsky in the quarters. I think I lost to him by a point. Yeah, I didn't get out of bottom in the third. I was down one and he rode me out. That sucked. And then I want to say I wrestled Mabaka in my second wrestle back. It was a match to get into the third and fourth place match.
Yes.
And with short time, I got to rewatch the match, but I'm pretty sure with short time in the third, I took him down and sent it into overtime or I escaped. And then in overtime, I'm hand fighting real good, and I think he dragged out a front headlock. And his left hand was on my left hip. His right hand, I want to say, was on my near hip, and he was kind of chasing the corner.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of circled out of bounds. Like, it wasn't so much that he was running me out of bounds. It was, I can't let him take my back, so my hips have to keep coming around in that circle.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to keep chasing my hip. And we wind up going out of bounds, and the ref was just wanting to make a call. Like, he was just getting jumpy.
Mm-hmm.
He hits me for fleeing the mat in overtime, so that ends the match right there. And I think my dad, my brother both got thrown out. Ray and Pete both got warnings. And then, I mean, everyone knew I got host. Like, no one was even arguing with the right call. AJ, after the match came up to me, was like, that was
Yeah.
that wasn't.
I was just gonna say, I believe Ibaka actually came up to you after that match and was like, "That wasn't the right call."
He literally said, like, that was a bad call. It was a terrible call. That ref was one of those Long Island refs. Like, that was a bitch. Honestly, like, I think he was the one that blew Mikey's call. Remember that seatbelt call where he gave him
Yeah,
the no?
Massapequa last year for third place when he lost
I'm
to.
pretty sure it's the same ref because I remember talking shit about him to Pete.
Yeah, coming to think about it, I think it might have been that same ref.
He was one of those Long Island guys that just, I guess, never was really that good at wrestling or something, and wants the ref for a paycheck.
So you mentioned Ray. Oh, excuse me. And I know Ray had a very big impact on you. Can you explain that kind of impact Ray had on you?
Yeah, Ray has obviously a wealth of wrestling knowledge. He was a two-time All-American. Um, you know, He was rounded as one of the best high school wrestlers of all time for a while. 3-time CHSAA State Champ. Lost 5 high school matches all when he was a freshman. So it was his shit. And I was kind of, when I was a freshman, I kind of latched onto him because I knew I needed something to break me out of, sort of kick me into a second gear. I started out like 2-12 my freshman year, so
Yeah.
I needed someone to kind of get me going a little. And Ray sort of loves the naggy, annoying kid that's always asking a question, so I became the naggy, annoying kid. And 4 years. He was a big influence in my career for sure. For the most part, he was like my main source of technique. My entire style of wrestling is based off of him. Yeah, I mean, if I'd listened to him my whole career, I'd probably be a state champ. But live and learn.
So I wanted to take a look at a couple of tournaments you were at, not only just Catholic states. A couple of Catholic schools, for those who don't know, compete in a New York City tournament called Mayor's Cup, which Monsignor Farrell does compete in. And in 2019, Ryan was a finalist, 2020 champ. And you had a very impressive run in 2019. You had I believe, a tough quarters and semifinals match.
We're gonna start with 2018 because in 2018.
Yes, that semifinal was just.
I was in the semis as a sophomore, 138, and I lost to whatever that kid's name was from Poly
Prep. I think his last name was like Liam Harvey or something like that.
With 4 seconds left, I somehow gave up a takedown and back points, but we're not going to talk about that because that was the worst call against me in my career because of how much I was pissed off about it. Because it was the semis of Mayor's Cup. I was as a sophomore, and I would have had Samson, who I knew, I knew how he wrestled. I could have beat him. But anyways, I get hosed there. I shoot to try and stall out the match. He sits me to my butt. He awards 2 while I'm still on my butt, kind of like almost in crackdown, but he's standing.
Yeah.
And then I try to roll back through and pass leg over, like backward, like almost backwards roll and pass leg over the top, and he called back. This is all 4 seconds left on the clock or something like that. And I gave him 4 points. I was up 2, and I lost. And so then I get Quincy Howard in my 3rd and 4th place match, and he winds up beating me like 5-2 or something. Grown man strength me to my back to get 4 or 5 points, and that was all he scored. And then that brings me to junior year Mayor's Cup, where I'm the 5 seed. I get an easy first round because the first round of Mayor's Cup is always pretty easy. And my second round, I get Quincy again.
Yeah.
What, did I beat him in overtime?
Yeah.
I think I took him down in overtime to win. And he won PSLs that year. Right? He was a 2. He won as a sophomore and senior, right?
I may have to double check. I don't.
So I beat him in overtime. Then I get Marquise, the 1 seed in the semis.
Yes.
I beat him on a last-second takedown. I was down 4-3, I think, and then took him down.
It was literally like you got it in the very last second, and it was on the edge, I believe, too. It was like almost out of bounds.
Yeah, I took a body lock, and then I want to say I shucked by, took his back, and then he just posted his. And we were in that kind of like freestyle. Not even a freestyle. He was still standing, but he just posted his hand down, and that was that. I got 2 points. And then in this finals, I took Jack down right away. And then he got a quick escape on the edge, and I was right back in on a good shot. I had him, I feel like I remember having both his legs wrapped in crackdown, and I couldn't get the 2. He kept, maybe he sat 1 leg back or something, but I remember being in crackdown, and I just couldn't seem to quite get into criteria. So I tried to just totally switch the spot. I think I remember trying to swim my right arm out, and then he recovered his bottom hip, sat the corner, and like Yanni Mahal style cradled me.
Yeah.
And it was a really sweet cradle. There's nowhere I could go, but that sucked because I was the better wrestler that year.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew I should have. I knew going into that match that he had to pin me in the first to beat me. He pinned me in the first. Like I knew wholeheartedly if I made it out of the first period, I was going to win.
Mm-hmm.
It was the year before he gassed real bad to Ant Lanza in the finals.
Yeah.
And then that brings it into my senior year. I kind of just, well, I shouldn't say I walked into the finals my senior year. I had a decent match in my semis with that judo kid. But then I got Jack in the finals again and showed everyone I was the better wrestler. But, yeah, it was a good feud we had. He teched me when I was a freshman, which sucks.
But you did have a very impressive run at Mayor's Cup. I remember watching in your year before you'd won that match, and I remember that was like one of your key like factors of motivation that drove you throughout your senior year, especially heading to that tournament. Like you had this just laser focus heading into that tournament. Like that's all you were there for was that one match, and you won it. And what was sweet about it was the very move that he used to pin you is what gave you the win. You locked up a cradle on the edge. His shoulder is about that much off the mat from the pin.
He extended his arm out like that and was keeping himself off his back with his fingertips.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way I saw it was I lost to a former teammate that I was better than, and that just didn't sit right with me, you know?
Yeah.
I shouldn't say I was better than him because he beat me, but at the end of the day, like, I'm always better. You know what I mean? Anytime I've ever lost, I'm like, that kid fucking sucked. I was way better. But, yeah, so that match went pretty much exactly how I wanted it to go. There were a few exchanges that I didn't like. He rode me out too long in the second. Really, other than that, I think that takedown right off the break. Other than those 2 points, I pretty much wrestled that entire match the way I wanted it to go. You know, you think about something for long enough, you're gonna, you know what I mean? You make something your goal for long enough, you're gonna do it.
Exactly.
And yeah, there's a couple of things like that that's just stuck in my head when I was getting ready for my senior year. But I always had things like that my entire career. It was always like, I got to beat that guy. I got to beat this guy. And for a while, it was Jack. Like, even when I was a freshman, he was starting over me. Like, yeah. I had to beat that guy.
So, which leads me into staying in a match mentally. That was one of your big characteristics while you were wrestling, because you were never on a very good receiving end of a ref's call. You were always on that other side, that those bad calls, those calls in those, it was just never in your favor. How would you describe staying in a match mentally just as physical?
Well, that's something that took a while for me to get used to. I remember like one year, I think it was my sophomore year, Math Piccolo, I had a head pinch, and I tried to finish head pinch, tried to almost gator roll him through, like, you know, the Mitch McKee where he rolls through him, comes out on top, like sort of like the ventriloquist.
Yeah.
But I roll through, and I don't get all the way through, but the ref awards the kid 2 and backs on my roll. This was from neutral. And this is at Mass Piccolo. Mm-hmm. I remember that as like my defining, like, I wrestled the rest of the match, like, I have to kill this kid because for some reason refs just will never get, like, they're just always gonna fucking use me. Yeah. Like, Rock didn't even argue the call. He literally just looked at me and was like, "There's nothing you guys just gotta pin him. Like, you gotta run the score up. There's no, like, I don't know what to tell you." And so yeah, you kind of just gotta grow up eventually and be like, you can't leave the match up to the ref. If you're wrestling someone who's good, it's a tight match, you guys are evenly matched, you have to always find that edge.
Mhm.
You know, you have to, whatever it is, you have to assume you're going to get a bad call.
Yeah.
Like, that's just always how it's, you know what I mean? Like, very rarely does the call ever go in your favor. Like,
Exactly.
for the most part, you're going to, you know what I mean? You can't leave matches down to tight calls, and if you do, your fault.
Mhm.
Like, you want to leave a match down to the last takedown, and you feel like he wasn't in criteria for the ref game points. Well, what are you doing in 1 point match? You should have scored again earlier.
Exactly. We did see that happen a couple of times with other guys. Same tournament the following year with Mike in his third place match. That very same
Yeah, there's definitely an issue with
instance.
Long Island refs.
Yeah.
They either
Where
suck hate Monsignor Farrell, but Mikey had a seatbelt.
and yeah,
For anyone who knows what a seatbelt is, that's beyond two. Like,
yeah.
that's riding for like, I can ride you out for
And
a
I
long.
believe he might have even had like a leg slipped in too. Like he was clear behind the kid too.
He was
No
sitting
point.
back with a seatbelt.
Hmm.
Like,
And
and it
then
wasn't like he just got there. He had it, and the ref wasn't giving him to. He was
exactly.
looking up like, what the fuck? What do you mean? No.
Because then I remember Mikey being told after that match to not let it get in the ref's hands.
Yeah.
And if any of that could have been prevented, it was more takedowns, more scoring, more
Yeah.
turns. All to prevent that one situation, that one call that can either put a match in your favor or most of the time put you on the losing end. Um, so we're going to talk about your Catholic State Finals match from this year, the Battle of the Ironmen. Um, you and Parrish of St. Joe's Collegiate, Ben
All right.
Parrish, were
The
both
Iron-
Ironman Award recipients that year, and it was just all came down to who was just going to top the other. Because no matter what, the other Ironman Award recipient was going to finish top two.
It's funny that the Ironman award is even like we look at it as like a prestigious award.
Yeah.
That's fucking nonsense.
Like after I had won it, like I honestly am not even joking. I forgot that award
Yeah.
until I had gotten it. Because, like,
I remember
especially when we're
we were
heading into our freshman year, we're like, oh my God, this Ironman award, that must be so cool. That big trophy that feels like it weighs 20 pounds, which it definitely feels like it weighs 20 pounds. But it's like, it's this whole big thing that it's made out to be. But it's like, if you just wrestle and you just do your job as a wrestler, it doesn't seem like a very far fetched goal.
Not even that. It's just not a far fetched goal.
Not at all.
When we were younger, like I remember the seniors talking about, like, man, it's so easy to just win it. I'm sitting there thinking, like, why didn't you win it then? I don't understand. How did you not play for Cal State?
Exactly.
But yeah, Parrish actually we wrestled twice, I think. No, three times.
Catholic State duels.
We wrestled 3 times our whole career. My freshman year, I lost to him. I was up 9-4. It was something like I was up by a few points, but I thought I was losing, and I went for a big throw at the end and lost on that. That's how I remember that match going. And then my
Senior year Catholic State duels.
Catholic State duels, yeah. That match, I wish that was the finals match because I feel like everyone thought that the finals match was like, oh, who's gonna win? But I mean, at Catholic State duels, I was up like I took him down a few times. I wrote him out.
I think it was like a 6-2 score. Like it was definitely more than the second time.
Yeah, because I won. What was it? 2-0.
You won 4-2. It was a takedown. Then I think a reversal at the end.
Reversal. We spent the whole match on the mat.
Yeah.
Which is almost a mistake because I knew he was a good leg rider. I knew we were more evenly matched on the mat than we were on the feet.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I went snap down, front headlock, go behind, and like.
Yeah, you just hit a snap and spin behind in like the first 30 seconds of the match, and that's how you got your first takedown of that finals.
But it was the finals match that was keeping me. It was because it was the finals match that was keeping me a little reserved. Like, don't get ahead of yourself. Don't try to run the score off. Make sure you get the win. Don't do anything stupid. We can't get caught in our back here. Whereas at Catholic State duels, it's like I really don't.
It's just another match at another duel.
I'm gonna wrestle my nuts off, like,
Mm-hmm.
which is really, that's back to like the experience thing. Like, I just have never been in the CAC State Finals. I knew I couldn't lose.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're wrestling knowing you can't lose, you win a match 4-2 instead of, bonus points.
Yeah.
That's sort of just how that goes.
Yeah. I remember I struggled with that too, like when I was my sophomore year, when I first made the finals, it was just like, to me, it was like I didn't see myself making the finals that year because the kid I had in the semis beat me for third and fourth the previous year. So I was like, this is tough. I may not even make the finals. Like, I lost to this kid, which all plays back to that whole mental aspect of wrestling and just going to wrestle. I ended up sticking him in the second period.
Yeah.
I was up 4-0 in the first. Like, that's not something I saw myself doing. So you're currently at Iowa, D1. Very impressive. Very, very impressive. What other colleges were you looking at, and what led to your decision to choose Iowa?
I was talking to UNC, and then Colvin Scott sort of just got to answer my emails. And I kind of put all my eggs in like a few baskets. It was like, I'm either gonna go to I'm gonna try again to Columbia. I spoke to coaches at Columbia, Princeton. I spoke with UNC. I spoke with LAU, but after Jimmy's run at LAU, I was like, that's definitely not happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd always been excited about Iowa, about the feat of going to the best school in the country. The prestige that goes along with being a University of Iowa wrestler. And Ray being a 2-time All-American for them, being friends with the brands, having that connection for me, kind of made doing that really realistic. Like, it wasn't, I literally just, like, Ray brought me to a dual meet against Iowa Princeton. I met brands. He was literally just like, come down, you'll work for a year and wrestle, we'll get you in state, and then you'll be a Hawkeye. And the brands hold Ray's opinion in such high regard that when Ray recommends a wrestler, in this case being me to them, they're excited about it. Like, my roommate Henry was telling me, who's also one of Ray's former wrestlers, that in January, like a week after I'd met the brands, Terry's telling the whole room how we're getting another one of Brinzer's wrestlers and like amping me up, and then I'm getting that news back in the room in New York, and I'm like, what the fuck? They have not, like, what am I getting into? They're gonna rip me to shreds. Most of the cool guys, though.
It's definitely really cool. I can only imagine just going into Iowa's room, which is before this whole thing happened, they were the number one team in the country. You know what I mean? And like,
and all of our guys back, we're getting a year of eligibility.
yeah, I think that this was just ruled recently to grant a 5th year.
Mm-hmm. Everyone's getting an extra year, so
works out in your favor. You guys can run that back.
Well, actually, I forget how it works. Like, I know Spencer gets to go for 4 titles now.
Mm-hmm.
The guys like
DeSanto and
Seth Gross get another year.
Yeah, they don't.
Retiring, like that was his last year.
He used his 5th year of eligibility, I believe, for this year.
Right. Because they're granting the eligibility year from 2021 to 2020 to 2021. At least that's my understanding.
So, which is really good to get some of the guys who didn't have a chance at their run this year to kind of get that back.
Yeah, there are guys that like easily could have won NCAAs as juniors and things. Like Spencer's going to go down as one of the best, if not the best American wrestler of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And without this extra year, he doesn't get 4 national titles.
Exactly.
People are talking about Spencer being the best wrestler ever.
Yeah.
Already.
Because he's pretty much done it all. He world team member, I believe. He was a junior world champ. Mm-hmm. He hadn't wrestled freestyle.
CAA runs. It's like, you
It's
kidding?
sick. Like he had gone off a prolonged period of time of not even wrestling freestyle. Think went to well, what was the freestyle tournament? He beat NATO in the finals.
Senior nationals?
It was senior nats, right?
Yeah, it was probably senior nationals.
That was his first time wrestling freestyle since the Junior World Championships, and he won. Like, that's really impressive.
Spencer's on a different planet than the rest of these guys. When you hear the brands talk about him rather, it's like, it's Jesus.
Like, I actually heard something because Suriano wasn't competing this year. He was on an Olympic red shirt. Rutgers had gotten Sebastian Rivera, and they actually made plans for Rivera to go to 33 and Suriano to drop down to 25 and challenge Spencer. They made an article about that.
Coach Goodell, that's stupid. Suriano's gonna lose.
The one thing about Spencer, yeah, I know we're going way off topic here, but he's one of those guys, like, even though he's good and he's really good, he's getting better.
Is his name Goodell? Why do I think his name is Goodell?
So, we're going to keep it moving. We're now going to move into, we just covered Catholic states. We're going to now go into 2 weeks after New York State's Time Union Center up in Albany. What was going on before you'd even step on the mat, making the trip up there to Albany? What was going through your mind?
I was going ready to be a state champ. I didn't think anyone in the weight class could beat me. I was sure that, I'm still sure that I was the best wrestler in the league. What happens is, I win my first match in OT, quarters match, I lose by a point. I basically just figured the kid out too late. He wrestles from a 3-point stance, stayed real low, waited for me to attack front head, and then he'd duck, fire off a shot as soon as I came in for front headlock because his hips slid underneath him really well, like real easy. Mm-hmm. Because my hips were so much higher than him, it was just easy for him to pop underneath me. He takes me down like 2 or 3 times in the first period. And then in the second period, I kind of start figuring out. And then I take him down. I escape and then take him down. Second, write him out. And then in the third, I choose bottom, escape, and take him down. And now I'm down by a point. And he managed to stall his ass off for like a minute. Mm-hmm. When I say stall his ass off, I mean back up to the edge, circle, dive to a shoelace, hold on, reset. Back up to the edge, circle, dive to a shoelace. And because the ref knows it's short time, he's calling those stalemates really quick, which is messed up because he's diving to my shoelace. I'm going to score this. Let me wrestle once. But he feels like, because they ref to the situation way too much. Like refs tend to ref towards the situation.
Yeah.
And when the situation, like I didn't need a stalemate there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you needed that position to play itself out so you can score.
In a minute. That's not how you have to let us wrestle through a position. And he winds up winning the match by point. And I don't know what the hell happened to me, but I couldn't walk after that match for like an hour. I had like this crazy cramp in my abdomen, and I was completely bent. Like I was in the how's that medical tent thing called? The paramedics thing. Like they had the kids in there.
It's like in the tunnel, right?
Mm-mm. It's like totally separate. Oh wait, it's above it's when you go in the back and there's the Raptors. There's like that when you
going towards the like you head into the tunnel, you make a right and there's like that stairs heading up.
Yeah, there's that like when you come in through the athlete's entrance. Mm-hmm. There's a floating staircase above you.
Yeah.
They had like a paramedics office or something with some gurneys in there. I spent like 20 minutes, like probably 45 minutes in there. Paramedics telling me that we had to call an ambulance, but I wound up being okay. Like I wasn't really okay that day. My second match he was a bomb. I pinned him, but yeah, that day sucked. I think what happened was on like in the first he got into sort of like almost like a wheelbarrow position, like where he'd taken my back to a like tripod, and like freestyle on your tripod, and you just go behind and you just kind of tackle from behind.
Mhm.
You just tackle both legs. You do something like that, but he winds up bending my spine up a whole bunch, and I think it just way stretched out my abs. And then right after the match, once I let everything relax, they just contracted a whole bunch because I literally couldn't move off the fucking floor in the back. And then what happened day 2? Oh, day 2 was a joke. Because the problem with me was I'd already known I wasn't winning the state tournament. Like, that was already, like, I was just done. You know what I mean? I wasn't winning. So my first match, day 2, the kid had gotten teched in his round before. So I didn't take him serious whatsoever. I was like, I'm walking over this kid. Like, he's a bum. And then he comes out and he's tough. I don't realize how tough he is until well into like the second or third period, and I wind up losing by like, he beat me by a bit. But that's on me. I didn't even by the time I lost the quarters, that was it. I was here.
Mentally, you weren't in the tournament.
Yeah, I'm gonna place. If I take third or if I take eighth, it really doesn't matter. I didn't win. Or at least that's how I look at tournaments. I mean, the last tournament of my folk style career, which is a little naive because it does help. If you take third in your state tournament and then you go on to Virginia Beach, it helps with seeding. You'll get a better seed. You're not going to wind up wrestling the 1 seed in the first round. But, it all comes down to I bumped up to 160. I just listened to Ray and went and beat Kovac to 52. Maybe I'd be a state champ, but who knows? I'd be like 3, 4, and 5 at 152. I'd beaten most of that way. I probably would have went like a 3 or 4 seed at 152 as opposed to 6 at 60, but it doesn't matter. I'm still at Iowa, so fuck it.
So a couple of more things before we sign off here. Do you have any funny stories of any of the tournaments you've gone to, some of your travels, heading to or from tournaments, practices, anything?
I mean, I've always got stories about wrestling. I was wrestling long enough to have good stories. I mean, I did a lot of traveling for wrestling. I've seen 2 and 3-year-olds curb stomping each other with their dad videoing it in Pennsylvania. That was pretty cool. Going out to Fargo, you get to see different ways. Like going to Iowa, this is their sport out here. Everybody, girls love it. There's single chasers everywhere. I'd encourage you to try. I'd encourage anyone who's wrestling to go and travel the country for wrestling. If you've got connections, if your coaches or anyone like anyone if you know someone who knows someone who knows someone, a lot of connections out of the country, go for it. Get out, get around. If you're from New York, there's a whole other planet of wrestling. Wherever you're from, I'd encourage get around the country and seeing some stuff, and because wrestling's not the same in every place. You go from Farrell's room to a room in Jersey, it's a completely different world. It's like Apex Wrestling Academy's room is a completely different world than Farrell, and so is Vogar's in Long Island, and every room you go into, it's just a different thing.
It's a different culture of wrestling.
100%. It's totally different place to place, and if you never get out and never go and say, you're hindering yourself as a wrestler. If you're just confined to one room your entire career, you're probably never going to be good. If you never leave your high school room, you'll probably never get anywhere. There are going to be some athletes that can stay there. High school room, never branch out, never really train that hard and be really good because they're naturally really gifted. But for the most part, you have to work your ass off and you have to travel and you got to spend a lot of time and fucking money to be good at anything. It's just how it goes.
Yeah. And that leads us to our last thing. Any last words for anyone who wants to chase their goals, chase their dreams, chase anything for wrestling, where it's to be Catholic State Champ, New York State Champ? Just what are your
Uh,
thoughts?
I mean, I feel like I laid out a pretty solid game
Yeah.
plan just before. Wrestle all year round. Wrestle your ass off. Learn to love to wrestle. Like, if you don't love to wrestle, you're never, you know what I mean? You're never gonna get good.
Yeah.
You just quit because you're wasting your time doing something you don't like, anyways.
Yeah.
You gotta be stubborn as fuck, and you'll get there eventually. Like, there's no luck involved. There's no secrets to it. I mean, put your wrestling shoes on every day for 4 hours a day and do that for 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, and just maybe you'll All-American or win a state champ. Like, just maybe.
Just maybe. It might happen.
Yeah, like, there's no secrets to it. The guys that are good because they work their ass off, and that's about it.
Yeah. You got to want it. You can't just be complacent. You can't just be satisfied. And if you don't have those goals and maybe you feel forced into it or
go for it all, but you always got to work your ass off. If you're ever thinking like, I just want All-American this year, you're not going to All-American. If you're thinking, I want to be the champ, you might be. But if you fall short, you might All-American. Odds are if you're training to be a national champ, you're going to at least All-American.
Yeah.
If you're training to place, like, I always thought that was the dumbest shit ever. People celebrating placing. Like, I don't fucking get that shit. I didn't celebrate winning things. I could you imagine? I could never celebrate placing.
Yeah.
Mortified. Mortified. I took 8th at states. That's embarrassing. I don't tell people that.
Yeah.
My boss here asked me what I took, and I was like, we're not going to talk about that. I won't. Well, I was multiple times state champ. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. You have to set your bar high. You have to set your goals high.
Much higher than you feasibly think you can achieve. And if you work at it long enough, you're going to get there.
Yeah.
Like, there's no special people in the world. There's no special athletes. There's some exceptional people who still have to work their ass off. Like, no matter who you are, like, Jimmy Ryan's the least athletic person I've ever met. And he's one of the most dominant top wrestlers I've ever met. Like, kid's good. Like,
Yeah. It's very tough on top.
Nothing special about him.
Yeah.
He's
a hard worker.
Less than an athlete, and he's a better wrestler than I am. Like, he lives and breathes wrestling, and that's why it's good.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your very busy day to join me tonight. It is almost 11:20. So I know you've probably been busy a lot with school, but it really meant a lot that you took the time out of your day to be a part of this.
I Red and Black merch, you heard?